Bandwidth for This Week in Photo is provided by the CashFly Content Delivery Network. Send your web content blazingly fast with CashFly. And now, pay as you go. Start with 2 terabytes free by going to CACHEFLY.com and use the promo code TWiP. This episode is also brought to you by FreshBooks, the super simple cloud accounting software that's giving thousands of freelancers and small businesses the tools to save time billing and get paid faster. Try it free at freshbooks.com/TWiP. And Pocket Shooters, the newest course to hit the TWiP school. It's all about mastering mobile photography. This course is priced at $147, but you can grab it today at the introductory price of just $97. Check it out now at twipschool.com. This is TWiP, episode 487, Amputees in Vogue. Sony's new 4K action cam has optical image stabilization. Paralympic athletes are replaced by able-bodied models in an ad campaign, and a tourist spends 13 days in a Cuban prison for flying a drone in Havana. It's Monday, October 17th, 2016, and this is TWiP. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson, here to chat about photography stories that we think you should be aware of this week are Christine Allward from ChristineThePhotographer.com and Don Komarechka from Don Komarechka Photography. Hey guys, how you doing?
Great. How are you doing, Frederick?
I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. As we were discussing before we started the show, I am in geekdom. Don, I know you can you can sympathize. So what we're doing is we're making some changes so that we can take TWiP live and start live streaming TWiP. And I am completely underwater in terms of geek stuff right now. Software and video conversion and cameras and, frame rates and all this stuff. So I'm trying to figure it out. I'm learning a lot. So hopefully this may be the last canned show that we do. Looking forward to live streaming. So Christine, you haven't been on the show in forever.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Where have you been? Last time you were here, you had just purchased a house. Like, have you sold that one and bought another one? Like, what's going on?
Almost. But no, not yet. No, things have been great. I've just been living the dream.
Yeah,
busy working.
I see some seamless paper back there. It looks like you were just shooting, huh?
I was, yeah. It's holiday season, so.
You doing lots of pumpkin shots?
No, I'm not into that. I don't do that.
You don't shoot the little babies like popping out of the pumpkin with a little thing on their head or something?
No, I don't.
Thank you. No,
I don't. I do. I mean, right now it's big. It's all families. It's all kids. It's all everyone prepping for holidays. And luckily, I have clients that are great, and they know that we need to start now, but no one wants to pop out of a pumpkin, so I'm happy.
Yeah. I'm going to make a pumpkin. I haven't made a pumpkin in forever.
I haven't either. Let's do it together.
Let's do one. And you know what I'm going to call it? It's going to be an orange pumpkin, obviously. I'm going to put a blonde wig on it, and it's going to be called Donald Trumpkin. I'm totally rocking the Donald Trumpkin. It's going to sit on my porch. It's going to have, make pumpkins great again on a sign in front of it. It's going to be awesome.
It's perfect. It is the scariest thing I could think of.
It's going to be good. Also on the show is Mr. Don Komarechka wearing a orange Donald Trumpkin shirt. What's going on, man?
Okay, well, I wasn't intending on it representing that, but all right, I'll have to change my shirt now, I guess. But it's no. So things have been great. I just finished doing a shoot and an edit process for about a week on a documentary film that I can't really quite talk about the details of yet. But needless to say, it was exhausting, pushed me to new limits, and the results are fantastic. So when I can talk about it, you'll hear about it. Usually things that are exhausting and push you to new limits are usually worth talking about. So and I'm totally going to put my daughter in a pumpkin. She's 4 months old now, so she'll fit really nicely in a big one. I don't know. That's like right on the edge of child abuse. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm
as
going
long
to
as
put
you
my
don't
kid
cut,
in a gourd.
just don't cut the holes for the legs to come out, because that just looks so painful.
No, I won't be doing that. That's for
Okay.
sure. But
And
no,
don't cut the
when she was
holes
3
while
days
she's
old-
in the pumpkin. Cut the holes
No,
before you put her
that
in
is
there.
terrifying. When she was 3 days old, her photo shoot was in a salad bowl, so she'll graduate to a pumpkin.
She's so gonna torture you when you're in your convalescent home. She's gonna be like, "You remember that pumpkin, Dad?"
Yeah.
And
yeah,
now
well, hey,
you're in a pumpkin, old man.
Oh God. But it's funny because most of the photos that we take of her are just with cell phones. They're not with any bigger camera, and I don't want to be known as that strange man behind the camera instead of Dad. So
Yeah.
there will be a few shoots here and there as festivities come about, but for the most part, no, it's just the snapshots that we go for.
Sure.
love it.
Yeah,
I
wait
love
till first birthday. That's the most fun. That's the best photo shoot.
It
First
will
birthday
be.
is my favorite.
So much stuff. So much stuff. Well, it's good to have both of you guys on the show, and this is a very special show for a lot of reasons. Because it may be one of the last TWiPs out of 487 that we record. We're going to go live in front of a studio audience, hopefully coming up real soon. But we also launched our Patreon campaign to allow the TWiP Army to help support TWiP and help us grow it and do things like this live streaming thing. So we launched it a couple of days ago, and we've already got a bunch of subscribers or a bunch of patrons in there. I want to read their names off, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that have donated and become a patron in the TWiP Army. So here goes the list. First time on TWiP. We've got Nicole Hawkins. We've got Jeffrey Totaro, who's a friend of TWiP. He's been on, architectural photographer. We've got Kieran Peasy. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Peasy. We've got Scott Davenport, John Martin, John Hoffman, David Welfett, Suman, Joshua Karp, Michael Casey, Ken Davidson, Steve Vansack, Antonio, let's see if we can get Antonio's name right, Nascimiento. Did I get that right? Nascimiento.
I'm not trying it.
Antonio Nascimento. There you go. Hope I got it right. Antonio, comment. Let me know if I got that right. Tom Arbor, Christian Navarro, Sean Maswan, Mikael, and a name with characters in it I can't pronounce. I'm going to say Sjorgen, SJO with an umlaut. That's an umlaut on it, right? GREN, and Craig Rothler. So thank you. You guys are the first enlistees in the TWiP Army. I appreciate you, and we're going to continue this trend of adding or reading off the new patrons that come into the TWiP fold. So if you want to help support TWiP, head over to twip.pro/donate. That's twip.pro/donate, and help us keep TWiP on the air and expand it and do some cool stuff. All right, let's dive into the stories here. The first story is where is it? Here it is. Yeah, Sony. So first of all, if you didn't know, Sony has this line of cameras called Action Cam, which have been in competition with GoPro and the other action cam makers forever. And in my opinion, the Sony cameras have been in some way superior to the GoPro brand, but I think Sony lost traction because GoPro built an ecosystem around their cameras in terms of mounts and cases and all that stuff, which Sony, I think, in the beginning had failed to do. Well, they've announced a new 4K action cam that has optical image stabilization built into it, which is kind of cool. And you may remember, if you know anything about Sony, most of their cameras their consumer cameras have steady shot in there, which is image stabilization, but it is software-based image stabilization. So essentially what it does is it blows the frame up a little bit and then does its math to stabilize the image, but you end up with a loss of quality. This new thing has optical image stabilization, which is ridiculously cool for something so tiny. So I want to throw it to you guys. First, you, Christine. I know you're not doing this kind of photography in your studio back there.
I'm obviously not the target market, right?
Obviously, yeah.
I'm so active out there on my snowboard and on my dirt bike. And,
and hang gliding and all that.
Yeah. However, I think it's really cool looking. And for $400, if I wanted to get one for my husband, who's more active and into that stuff, I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know. You know what I think? I think about this stuff when I see it. I mean, I like these cameras, and of course, I like gadgets and everything. It's a cool camera. I actually have a couple of older action cams that I rarely use. Like, I'm never using these cameras, so I'm like, why do I want this thing? And the other thing with these action cams, and I think it's the GoPro problem as well, is that once you buy one, you don't use it that often, so they don't wear out that quickly. So when they come out with a new one, you look at your older one, you're like, do I really need to? I mean, I've barely used this one. Do I really need to get another one? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it would make a good stocking stuffer, though, right?
Everything claims to be the GoPro killer, and I don't know. I know GoPro is gonna not be on Amazon, right? Something about that. So maybe.
I don't know. I think GoPro might be the GoPro killer.
Yeah.
You know, self-inflicted wounds. I mean, I don't know. I mean, or DJI might be the GoPro killer with the whole Mavic versus the Karma drone thing. But I don't know. What do you think, Don Komarechka? Like optical image stabilization? What we were saying, I know you dropped out and came back in, but what we were saying was, or what I was saying was that when you buy these kinds of tools, you very rarely, unless you're like an extreme sports kind of person, but you very rarely use them, which means you don't have a lot of wear and tear on it. So when they come out with another one, you kind of think, well, do I really need that? I mean, you know, what do you think?
Yeah, well, it's a tough question to answer because when it comes right down to it, the real selling point of upgrading has to be huge, right? It can't just be a slight increase here and there. Like we might consider doing an upgrade for in other areas like our cell phone or something like that. You know, I know a lot of people will buy the latest iPhone when it comes out, or they'll skip a generation and they'll get the second. But, you know, you're getting a phone every 2 years. I don't think you need to get one of these action cameras every 2 years or 3 years or maybe even 4 years. Now, This does have two interesting features in it. It's got that optical stabilization that you mentioned, and the GoPro doesn't have that. And so for some, and I'm going to say it's a small section of the market, they might be craving it. But I've got a feeling that people that are happy with the GoPro, they don't know what they're missing. And so they're not craving this new feature that they don't yet have. It's just it's not even on their radar.
Yeah.
And so keeping that in mind, 4K video footage, yeah, that's useful. Maybe it's more useful in editing when you want to crop in and give you a little bit more flexibility within that. But for a lot of the content that I see online, that I see streaming on YouTube or Facebook or any streaming service from the general population, very little of it is 4K. I think it gets transcoded to lower resolutions. Maybe I'm just not watching it in 4K, and that's an option. Yeah. But and I know a lot of people, they want to record in 4K now so that they have that later, and that's great, and so that might be a feature. But I got to talk about the elephant in the room here. I spent 45 minutes or so in my garage digging this out. Okay, so...
Okay, for the listening audience, Don Komarechka just pulled out a vintage Game Boy.
A vintage Game Boy.
Oh,
there you go.
It still works.
And it still works. So
you need to capture that sound. That needs to be your incoming text message sound.
Exactly. So I'm looking at this game, and if I'm looking through this, and I know that this is more of an audio podcast than anything else, this has a fairly large LCD screen that has menus for this RPG game that I found also in my garage that I can navigate through with far greater ease than I can on any of these little mobile action cameras. This is 27 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
What is the problem, guys? I mean,
yeah.
So
you're talking about the Sony interface, and apparently they announced that they had made some changes or some improvements to the interface. So
yeah, so now
you
can see. I saw some of it being demoed, and so you now actually get to see more than one menu option on the screen at a time. Because previously, you would see like one word, and you would scroll to the next word. No, I don't want that. You scroll to the next word. No, I don't want that.
Know.
You wouldn't
and
be able
get
to
lost
see the
in the
whole menu
grid.
at once.
Yeah, when I had one, you had to even with the GoPros. I remember when I initially got the GoPro, I had to literally sit there. I hadn't used a GoPro in years, and we did that White House thing. I was in the White House and I was trying to set up a GoPro to do time lapse of the setup, and I'm literally under pressure at like 30 minutes to get this thing going, and my hands are shaking. I'm like, how do you get to? I had to like step out of myself and like, okay, it's a grid, Frederick. Just imagine it's a grid and you're moving up, down, left, and right on a grid. And then once I kind of visualized it like that, I was able to get my bearings.
Sure. And so I saw the new Sony menu at play, and it is a vast improvement over the previous one. Mm-hmm. It is still, comparing to the video that I've seen of that, to this 27-year-old Game Boy, it's falling short. I mean, it's not a technological problem. Clearly, it isn't. So the shortcomings here are just engineering, putting resources into the wrong place. You need to make this camera as easy to use and as convenient to use as possible. Look at GoPro with their new voice activations and all of that, and that's a step in that direction for sure, because you can't be using the device, you can't be pressing buttons on the side of it and using it at the same time. I think that Sony has improved, but I still think that they're falling short. And if you look at the price points, they're selling this new camera for $400. Mm-hmm. And that's great, but the GoPro 5 Black is also $400. And so
and they've got the AS300R, which is only 1080p, and that one's $300. So
right, and so, but at that price point, they need to drop each of these cameras down by $50. If they could have their 4K camera at $350.
It's the, like, you think about how many cool movies there were back in the day. You know, like you go like when they really had to work the tools on movies, and you know, they were like some amazing scripts like 50 whatever years ago. Like they were making some really good like storytelling, and I bet those filmmakers back then were probably like, you know what? If I had unlimited resources and I was only limited by my imagination of what I could put on the screen, I can't imagine what I would do. Then you fast forward today and you have Michael Bay making Transformers. It's the same thing with this stuff. So back in the day with the Game Boy, they had to figure out how to do more with less, because they only had certain processor speeds and battery life and all that stuff.
It was a 1 megahertz processor in this machine, by the way.
I had a Commodore 64 that I learned how to code BASIC on. It was awesome. And now, you know, times have changed.
They have, but the fundamental user interface hasn't. I mean, if you look at cameras back 50 years ago, I mean, there were umpteen knobs and dials and switches and levers, all for very specific purposes. And then we get to these action cams that they have one button, and that one button has to serve 10 purposes if it can. And it's very hard to control a device that way.
I don't know. You know, sometimes, Christine, I love having you on the show because you represent more of the photographer, right? So there's like this line, there's like this, you know, you represent a photographer in a 6-foot range, and at about the 3-inch mark, you start moving into geekdom. Don Komarechka is about, 5 inches in?
Oh, I'm a lost cause. I know that.
I don't like stuff. I'm like the worst when it comes to this. I'm like, just keep it.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, because you look at your photography and it's amazing. So it's not like you're the perfect example of it ain't the gear. You know,
no,
it's not
right.
It's not the economy, stupid. It ain't the gear, stupid. It's the photographer and the vision and the client and, you know, the subject photographer interaction and all that stuff. Do you agree?
I do. You know, not that someone can't have a vision with an action camera. I've seen some amazing stuff.
True.
You know, but I use what I use, and I don't venture outside of that very much, and I'm okay with that. But I find it so interesting listening to Don, who understands all this stuff and knows it all, and like maybe
Don
I should
lives
try
in the
to
Matrix. Don marinates his bedroom. I'm sure is filled with zeros and ones.
It's fascinating. I just, this is what I do every day. I use what I use because that's all I need. And I don't go outside of that very often unless I have to, and this isn't something I feel like I have to use in any way, shape, or form.
I want to congratulate you on what you just said, because that means that you're focused on the art, you're focused on your craft, and you're not focused on the technology. You know, we've had so many conversations on TWiP and elsewhere, and the internet is rampant with technology conversations about gear and what little setting on one camera supersedes and makes it so much better than the previous version or another manufacturer. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. The most impactful, most powerful, influential, enigmatic, and emotional images that we've all seen, and I could name a few, the Afghan Girl, Tank Man, Napalm Girl. The list goes on for those iconic photographs that I could just say the name of and you can picture in your head. Yeah. Those were all made on what we consider antiques today, by far. And so you have to dial it back and look at, okay, the idea behind our craft is, yes, we push limits when we have to. We push limits not just technologically, but creatively. And so if the gear lets us push certain technological limits, that lets us do a creative idea. So if 4K lets you explore this new creative idea, that optical stabilizer lets you accomplish something that you could not do without it, then this camera is absolutely for you. If you don't have that creative idea waiting in the wings, and that's your only creative idea, you've got nothing else creative, then yeah, maybe get this camera, because then you can explore that one idea. But if that's the only idea you have, I think you might be doing it wrong. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think of it as like, because I'm an analogy man, right? So I think of it as like Batman, right? So Batman has the Batcave, and he has the car that has all these crazy gadgets on it. He has his suit with all this crazy stuff on there. He has to be ready for anything at any time, right? Because he's Batman. You never know what's going to come up on him. Photographers are not Batman. You don't have to like, okay, just in case something, I need to shoot some action footage, I got to have that in my bag. I need to have, I need these 12 lenses in my bag. I got to have these batteries. Oh, if these run out, I got you. So, and I was guilty of this in the very beginning of my career, of like, okay, I need to build a kit that will allow me to capture any situation that I happen to be presented with, which seems plausible and correct on the surface, but it's untenable just below the surface. So the way that I operate now is I have a minimalist now. So I have two camera bodies. One has a 15 mil lens on it. One has a 42.7 f1.7 lens on it. And that's what I carry around with me.
I've been with you on set. It's like, where's Frederick's gear? yeah,
because I used to be that guy that's like, carry all this stuff around. Now I carry small things that and it's surprising what I can do with very little, or not even very little, because the gear that I have is sophisticated. It's just small, but it's amazing the stuff that I can do today in the same situation that I had a giant low pro bag with, F4s in and giant lenses and batteries and all this stuff. Now it's all gone. I can capture all this stuff with two little cameras and my phone for the most part, and hopefully soon a Mavic. And we're off into the races. And you look at some of this stuff too, and you see that GoPro, what they did with their session camera, that is just incredibly small. I was actually thinking of buying one of those just to stick up in a corner while I'm out photographing snowflakes, or just as a behind-the-scenes camera, just to stick somewhere and record what I'm doing as footage for workshops and for courses and video products that I might be working on in the future. There is a use for that, even though I'm not that outdoors action guy. Yeah. I'm just looking at the form factor of this Sony camera, and it doesn't appeal to me. I don't know what it is. It just feels misguided in some way, shape, or form, to bring it back around to the topic of this camera. And I wish Sony the best. I hope that this product sells enough to recover their engineering costs for them to do better next time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're clearly not, all three of us are clearly not the target market for this. There may be a crowd of people that are just like dancing on the ceiling because we finally got optical image stabilization into this device, but it's not us. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. This episode is brought to you by FreshBooks. So you're racing against the clock to wrap up 3 projects. You're prepping for a photo shoot later in the afternoon, all while trying to tackle a mountain of paperwork. Welcome to life as a freelance photographer. Challenging? Yes, but our friends at FreshBooks believe the rewards are so worth it. With freelancers and small business owners in mind, FreshBooks has announced the launch of an all-new version of their cloud accounting software. It's been redesigned from the ground up and custom built for our needs, photographers. FreshBooks has created a super intuitive tool that makes it easy to create and send professional-looking invoices in less than 30 seconds. You can easily customize your invoice with your logo, color scheme, or any image that reflects your brand. You'll be able to see what invoices have been sent, viewed, and paid, as well as overdue and outstanding invoice totals. You can even chat with your client regarding an invoice once they receive it. The modern and simplified dashboard works as the hub of your business, answering the most important question: how is my business doing? You'll have quick access to outstanding balances, spending, total profit, and accounting reports like tax summary and profit and loss. Tracking expenses is as easy as taking a photo of your receipt and using the FreshBooks iOS app. You can track expenses by vendor and by category, and time tracking makes it easier to bill for time by client and by specific projects. You can easily start your timer and track your time to the minute. And when it comes time to create an invoice, you'll know what you did and when you did it. So get ready for the simplest way to be more productive and organized, and most importantly, get paid quickly. FreshBooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to the TWiP audience. To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/TWiP and enter TWiP in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Start your 30-day free trial today. And we thank FreshBooks for supporting this episode of This Week in Photo. All right, guys, on with the show. This next story that I want to talk about is about the Paralympics. And it is, I don't know, I'm not going to lead the witness on this because I have certain opinions about this story. So let me set it up for you, then we can get your comments. And this comes to us from Metro News. So an ad campaign from Vogue basically uses able-bodied models as substitutes for the athletes at the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. So basically, Vogue magazine published photos of two soap opera stars and then used people that had lost limbs, to make them look like, and Photoshop them to make them look like amputees, and then put those in the magazine to try to bring awareness to the 2016 Paralympic Games, which apparently is only 15% sold right now. So they were like, they're in emergency mode and they're trying to get attention. So they're getting attention. I don't know if it's the right kind of attention. Christine Allward, Christine the photographer. What do you think? Is this? On the one hand, let me set it up for you. On the one hand, okay, they and I don't know if there are two hands. On the one hand, they're building advertising.
There's only one hand. There's one hand in the picture.
There you go. On the one hand, and then on that same hand. But on the one hand, they're trying to bring awareness to something, to the 2016 Paralympic Games, which is by definition a good cause, right? So they're doing by any means necessary. If you can get people in there, it helps the cause. On the artistic side, it just leaves a rubbery, nasty taste in my mouth of, exploiting people and not telling the real story. Like, I was looking at these photos, and I'll bring the photos up on the screen. I was looking at the photos, and I was thinking, like, what's wrong with the real people? Why, like, can...
Well, that's the thing. They were there. Like, the real people were on site as inspiration. Like, what does that even mean?
No, it means exactly that they took that guy's prosthetic leg and put it on the guy that had two perfectly fine legs. Like, they just photoshopped his fake leg.
Yes.
And that woman's the part of her arm where it ends and whatever scars that she has, those exact scars are on the soap opera star. And it's just...
It's terrible. I mean, I think it's such insincere marketing. I understand that you're trying to sell tickets. Find a way to get the celebrity endorsement and include the amputees that are going to be competing, and create a story where, you can use the celebrity endorsement to sell tickets or whatever. Like, I'm fine with that, but the Photoshop element is just terrible.
It is terrible, and I'm thinking, like, as I'm
shot
looking at the photo,
four of them together is adorable. Like, what's wrong with that?
Why not just do that? Yeah, exactly. So they're trying to get the star power of these soap opera stars to draw attention to this event. Why not just do that? Why be disingenuous and create a shot that is fake? obviously fake. It's kind of a slap in the face, you know?
Yeah.
And what was the slogan? We're all Paralympians or something. And then, but the photo that they photoshopped is just them standing there. Like, I don't understand anything about it.
We're not all Paralympians. That's the problem, okay?
Right.
I am not a Paralympian. I have all of my limbs. I have all of my abilities. And I'm not an athlete. I could not hope to do anything what these people do. So when you don't put the actual Paralympians up in front of the camera, you know what would have been a really fun idea? Is if you had these two soap opera stars that look somewhat similar to the people that they are borrowing their amputations from, put them together in the same sport. I'm not sure exactly what sports these people play, unfortunately. I wish I had read more into it, but it was more of a sensational piece than anything. Yeah. But if you put the guy with the prosthetic leg against the soap opera star in whatever sport he is competing in, he would kick the crap out of the soap opera star, and that would be a worthy story. I think that would be the celebrity endorsement that they would be after, but they totally missed the boat on it.
Yeah, unless he lost, and then they'd have to suppress it.
Well, okay. True, but even still, I think that it would be in good sportsmanship at the very least.
Totally. But no, I agree. There's a million different ways they could have taken this, other than, hey, look at what we did. Because now it's a story about how good you can be with Photoshop, not necessarily about these amazing athletes that are doing things that able-bodied people even can't do.
And if you're talking about doing stuff in Photoshop, I mean, Photoshop these guys into like rock star superheroes. Mm-hmm. I mean, take it to the nines in Photoshop to like do elaborate backgrounds, to like put them into these wonderful setups where they are the heroes of this game, and make it about them and not about some celebrity that is taking their place.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I think we all fall on the same side of this argument.
And I think everybody else does too. And I also want to say it's deplorable what Vogue came back with a response as. Saying, yeah, we're standing behind this. Yeah, it's sort of a punch in the gut, but that's what we wanted to do, and we're okay with that. And no, you shouldn't be defending yourself at that point. You should at least try to apologize in some way, shape, or form. And
well, let's talk about that a little bit, because that's the other piece of it. It's taking the morality and, it's embarrassing and you should have done X, Y, and Z, but looking at it from the standpoint of marketing. It's a brilliant marketing move, right? I mean, we've seen over the past several months that all press is not necessarily positive, but it still gets people talking about it, and we're talking about it on this show, and they're talking about it on Metro News, and it's a big story. Whereas if they had not done this, I doubt that the story would have gone as big as it is. So in a lot of ways, they are in fact drawing attention to the Paralympic Games by doing something as ostentatious as this.
Yeah, but not in a good way. We boil back to that idea that all press might be good press in certain scenarios, and yes, for Vogue, it might be selling magazines and getting clicks, and they'll be making money from their advertisers and what have you. I don't think that's a good thing, though. I mean, sure, they've got money because of it, and that might make them do more controversial things in the future because they saw a financial success with this. That is the worst kind of deal with the devil encouragement that you could see. And it's just, I don't want to see that. I don't want to promote that. We're talking about it on TWiP. I don't want anybody listening to go and click on these articles. Please, just listen to us. Be distasteful of the entire thing, be angry about it, and don't give them any fractions of pennies by clicking on their links and seeing some ads.
I like to see when Don Komareska gets riled up. I think that the curls they get puffed out just a little bit more. I love it. I love it. All right, well, we'll link over to the story, and like Don says, don't necessarily click through to give them links if you don't want to. But it is an interesting story from a photography standpoint. It's interesting from photography and from a marketing standpoint, notwithstanding the morality that comes into play. All right, story number 2, speaking of morality and foreign countries to the U.S., this is interesting. So Chris Hughes, a photographer. Actually, he's not a photographer. He's a designer. He owns a design firm in Canada. And he recently went on a trip to Cuba for fun and adventure. And he had some of the latter and very little of the former. So he went there and essentially decided he's going to bring his DJI Phantom drone with him and get some aerials. Of course, I would do the same thing. And he did that, but they incarcerated him for 13 days for flying his drone in Cuba. And it's a horrible story. I watched the whole video, and they put him in a tiny cell, gave him a piece of chicken every day and some rice that was probably, not all rice, and had a hole in the ground to take care of his bodily functions. And for 13 days, he didn't even know if people knew he was alive, and all because he had a drone. Christine Allward, this is scary, right? Especially considering...
this is like what nightmares are made out of.
Oh my God,
This is terrible. And, I'm not surprised that this happened to him in Cuba. I'm not kind of surprised he's surprised a little bit.
But he wasn't doing anything. I would be surprised if I had gone to Cuba and had my drone with me, and I'm like on the beach. I'm like, oh man, look at the colorful buildings. This would be amazing from the sky.
But he wasn't at the beach. He was at somewhere. What did he say? He mentioned where he was, and it was something else,
Revolution
right?
Square.
Yeah, Revolution
Right.
Square. Yeah.
I don't know. So I watched the whole thing too, and I kind of don't believe him.
Oh, you think he was doing something nefarious down there?
It seems like a PR stunt.
Oh,
He did not seem genuine to me at all. The way that he was speaking in that video was very strange to me. I kind of was just like, this guy's making some stuff up.
That's interesting. I never even... See, that's the trusting person in me. I need to get rid of that guy, because I'm like always, call it gullible, but I always believe... It's always innocent until proven guilty. So I always believe people at their word.
I feel bad. Like, I don't want to say he's a liar. I'm sure it happened, but, if it happened to me, I'm sure I would be, like, out of my mind too. But the way he was telling the story was just very strange to me.
Yeah. Ooh,
Okay, but this guy, if you watch the video, he gets his thrills going into active war zones almost. He is an adventure and thrill seeker, the likes of which I consider to be reckless.
Would he say 18 countries in the past year, he said?
I think it was over 20, he said, in the past year. And with a wife and 2 small kids at home, I'm a new dad. I would not necessarily be doing those reckless things. I don't know his life. I'm not going to judge him. But I most certainly wouldn't do some of the things that he's done. I would, because he lives less than an hour from me. I would love to sit down over a beer and hear his stories and live vicariously through them. That's fine by me. But I look at this and I think, okay, if it is legitimately true, Revolution Square, for those that don't know, it's surrounded by buildings where a lot of the high-level bureaucracy of the Cuban government is located. And so there are military guards around, I'm sure, and there are people paying very, very specific attention to people doing things that might be associated with spying. And so I don't think it's inconceivable that he gets detained as a potential spy or terrorist and goes through this particular process. After 5 days, he met with the Canadian consulate, and they said that your wife knows you're alive and that they know you're here, and so that added some sense of relief, I'm sure, to that experience. But imagine for 5 days you're locked in a cell, solitary confinement, no sunlight, no anything, and you don't know if anybody knows you're alive or dead.
That's horrible.
That is terrifying. That is terrifying beyond belief. Now that being said, there are countries that have very strict laws about photography and about drones, and if you take that equipment into a country without knowing what those rules are, you are subject to the penalties. And that's just the bottom line for this kind of a scenario. If you're being reckless in certain ways, play within the rules, play outside the rules. If you're outside the rules, then there are consequences to face if you get caught. I think that it all just boils down to that. The consequences here could have been far worse for this guy. He was out in 13 days. He was mentioning in this video that there were people there, some guy from Russia, 14 months, and 2 people from Italy. No, Russia and Italy are not third world countries or developing nations nearby. They would potentially have the power to get their people out. So maybe the real heroes here is Chris's wife, who thought something was wrong and reached out to the Canadian government. And the Canadian government, for solving this problem, removing the label of being a terrorist and a spy, and getting him declared innocent in less than 2 weeks. So, I've been to
but
Cuba on
it-
vacation, and it's a wonderful place. I'd love to go back there. I'm not going to bring a drone, but you know what was funny? When we were in Cuba, we were at a resort near Santiago, and wonderful place. Would go back there in a heartbeat. We didn't realize at the time that it was about 10 kilometers away from Guantanamo Bay.
Oh.
And so fast forward to today. If I were to do that today, now that drones are prevalent and I could potentially take one with me, and I'm just walking down the beach with my lovely wife and say, okay, well, let's just do some wonderful beach shots, and I fly a drone accidentally over Guantanamo Bay, I'm a new detainee there. You know?
I was going to say, you would become a new resident possibly there. Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known. Right? So you have to be very, very careful about these things.
Yeah, no, I know. I totally agree. Yeah, it's an interesting story, and Christine, you know, shedding the light on it that it could be a PR stunt.
I'm
that's
sure
that's
it's
surprising.
not. I'm just
and then it's
cynical.
also
I'm just
and then also the
cynical.
idea that maybe he was doing something. I mean, like with anything, especially when in a country that's foreign to you, you know, you have to, me as an ex-military person, if I see anything that looks government related when I'm outside of the United
Right.
States, I'm like, no sudden movements, just walk,
Yeah.
try to
Well,
blend
and,
in.
I mean,
I'm a tree,
This
You
just
know?
really puts a pin on the point that photographers are looked at as suspicious a lot of the times, no matter where you are. And it's
Totally.
something, I won't trespass. I will get a permit if I'm supposed to have a permit. I research where I'm going if I'm taking people somewhere. I think it just goes to show the responsibility that you have to have as a photographer, because people do kind of give you the eye and
But when you
want to
think
know
this
what
guy-
you're doing.
When you
and-
think Chris has, having gone to umpteen more countries than I've ever been to in the last year, you would think that he has that level of sense to know the do's and don'ts of flying drones near government installations or military or anything
Well,
like that.
I think knowing or not knowing is different than caring or not caring.
Oh, you mean like, hey, I'm gonna ask forgiveness. I'm just gonna get the shot, kind of thing.
Yeah, ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that might be the solid line for a lot of photographers, because I've done some urban exploration myself, and I know some photographers that have even made TV shows about that particular thing. And urban exploration, for those that might not be familiar, is basically recreational trespassing. So, I mean, you find an abandoned building and you go and you explore it. And with a camera in hand, you can get some remarkable images if you go into the right kind of building. I myself, the most fantastic one that I've been in is called Buzulja, which is, I might be messing up the pronunciation, but it is the former Communist Party headquarters in Bulgaria, built during the era of the Soviet Union. It is a remarkably destroyed building. Maybe I'll even send you a link to put a picture in the show notes, because if
Yeah,
people are curious,
please
you
do.
should really see this building. It is fantastic and phenomenal. I met more English-speaking people in that building than I did in the rest of the country. But it is an abandoned state-owned building, and so if you get caught in there, I mean, there might be some issues about that. A colleague of mine was he was traveling through an abandoned building. I can't remember exactly where, but the point of the story was that he heard some other people in the building and decided to hide in a closet because he wanted to avoid any possible confrontation. It turns out that the police were training their canine units in that same building, and they found him pretty damn quickly.
Yes.
And
Oh man, that's
and
hilarious.
he got off without any issues. They saw that he didn't have a backpack full of spray paint cans. He had like some 4x5 large format cameras and stuff that he was taking pictures with. And so they realized, okay, slap on the wrist, just don't do that again. That was dumb. Just go away now.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of response that a lot of people that take risks hope that they get. And if they get any worse than that, well, they've taken the risk to start with, so you deal with the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go to where the shot is, right? But there's, like Christine said, there's a line. You could go to where the shot is, and you could operate under the auspices of ask for forgiveness after you do it, and that may work sometimes. But every now and then, you may spend 13 days in a Cuban prison for flying a drone in Havana. So. Yeah, that's scary. I do not want to do that. I don't want to end up in a Vietnamese jail. That could be that could be bad for my.
I don't want to end up in any jail. Period.
Any jail. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, people outside the United States are like, man, I don't want to end up in an American jail. You know what they do over there? So, yeah, jails just suck in general. So let's try to keep our photographers and the TWiP Army outside of incarceration. Do the right thing. Use common sense, and you should be fine. All right, guys, let's move on to the last segment here, listener Q&A. I think we're in listener Q&A. Yeah, this is where you guys get to answer a question that's come in from one of the listeners. This one comes in from Monty Vanderbilt, and Monty says, I would love to be able to push a button on my camera and speak a short phrase that would eventually become a caption. It would help me remember why I took that particular shot. With advances in speech recognition, this would be a killer feature for me. Do any cameras do anything like this, or even save audio clips without the speech recognition? Don Komarechka, what do you think? I'm an ex-Nikon guy. I'm still a Nikon guy. I still have all my Nikon gear. And the Nikons have a little audio microphone button on the back where you can press it and caption your images as you go. And Lightroom reads those captions, so you can play them directly in Lightroom. So the support is there. It doesn't do speech to text, but it does, it will record the audio file. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that might be something that you wouldn't put in the camera as far as a speech to text feature, but it could be interpreted in software like Lightroom could have the speech to text functionality, so that you don't have to deal with that in camera, taking up whatever resources are required in order to maintain that functionality. The high-end Nikon cameras, I know the D3, D4, that series will have that feature. I don't know if the lower ones do in the Nikon system.
Some of them do.
And for Canon, I've got a few cameras around me. I took a look at my 5D cameras. This is 5D Mark II. It does not have that feature. But I was looking at the 1DX and the 1DX Mark II, and yes, it has exactly that feature. So if I were to be reviewing an image, all I have to do is press that little record button, and then all of a sudden it brings up a little thing that says recording memo. And so right now it's recording that memo, and then I just let go of that button, and then that stays with that file.
Is there a limit to how long that audio file can be? Like, is it like
says it's 30 seconds, which is more than enough for most cases.
30 seconds in it'll cut off, or 30 seconds and then it'll stop and create a new file and keep going?
I think it just cuts off. Although, to be honest, it's not a feature I've ever used. So I tested it, and I know that it works in preparation for this. But I think Canon reserves that for just the 1D series camera bodies. And I don't know if any of the mirrorless or Micro Four Thirds or smaller point-and-shoot cameras will have this feature as well.
None that I own.
It doesn't seem like it's a difficult feature to include. However, I think that it is a very seldomly used feature, and thereby you're not likely to find it on anything but either niche products or the top-of-the-line flagship cameras.
I agree. I mean, I have my Nikon forever, and multiple Nikon cameras that all had that feature, and I think I used that feature exactly once, and that's when I discovered it after taking it out of the box, and I was like, let me see how this works. Oh, that's cool. And I never really use it again. Christine, would you, Monty Vanderbilt's question is about, having audio annotations. Would you use anything like this in your daily workflow?
I was trying to think of, I'm in the Canon 5D world, so I don't have this capability on my cameras.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of is I've been in situations where I'm doing like a plethora of headshots in a row, and it's 5 minutes with a person. I'm not really remembering who they are, and I have to sync up delivering images to the right people.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, maybe I could put the name in there, and that would be really helpful. So I'm not dealing with paperwork, it's just in the file. I use my phone for stuff all the time. I'll do a little video and record a caption. Yeah. If it's a historical thing and I want to remember. Usually I just take a picture of the sign that's there so that it's in line with what I need to remember.
I
don't know.
If they had this on my cameras, I might use it. I'm just the worst at captioning stuff. I'm just I just shoot, and then later I figure it out in the back end, and do all that stuff later. I don't know that I'd want to do it while
You know what would
shooting.
be very useful, though, is if I could translate my spoken word into not just a caption. I don't think I'd find much value in a caption, but keywords.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So if I was in a particular scene, and my camera has GPS information, so I don't necessarily need to speak of the location, but if I take a picture of a particular bird and I recognize the species of that bird, and I can speak to the camera and identify that species of bird that then gets translated into a caption. I mean, that's just one small scenario. It could be the make and model of a car. It could be anything based on what you like to photograph. And having that automatically keyword things, I think, would be the saving grace for me, because I don't keyword anything. I use reverse geotagging to get me geo keywords, but beyond that, it becomes a bigger challenge for me to find stuff afterwards. If I could do that in camera in the field as just part of the process of taking the image, I think that would be far more useful.
I think so too. I totally agree with you. I think that's brilliant.
Now, I do know, Christine, you'd mentioned about doing a whole bunch of headshots in a row, and kudos for using the word plethora. But if you have the idea of doing that, like I know that there are photo studios that like go into an elementary school and photograph like every single kid in the school within a day. Canon made versions of the 7D and the 7D Mark II that have a barcode reader functionality based into it. So you can connect a barcode reader to whatever predefined list. So you scan the barcode, that gets associated with the EXIF data. Very similar idea. They don't have that on any 5D camera, just the 7Ds. But it then goes back to that same idea that we can use these features in order to, in the field while we're shooting, document and categorize and organize our work, and there currently isn't a good, at least not a universal workflow for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the machine learning stuff, because I like the idea. I mean, once it gets smart enough to be smarter than we are, I like the idea of having machines do all that work and pick out and basically keyword everything for me, because otherwise it's never going to get done. It's not going to be consistent. As long as you have humans involved with anything, it's never going to be consistent. So.
I noticed Facebook gave my images keywords recently. I didn't know that was a thing.
Uh-oh.
Flickr is doing this as well, where if you upload an image that is predominantly a certain color, they'll add the keyword of that color to the image, and other subjects that might be identifiable. Say if you take a picture of the moon, pretty sure that can be an identifiable feature, and Flickr might be able to say, hey, this is a photo of the moon automatically, and add that keyword to it.
Yeah.
We are at the tip of the iceberg of this stuff. We will be seeing much more of it in the very, very near future, I think.
We talked about this on TWiP a couple of weeks ago, and Google has recently updated their algorithm. I think they talked about it at Google I/O as well. Their image machine learning algorithm that looks at images and determines what they are and adds keywords based on that so they can become searchable. So, it's basically smarter now. So if there's like a train sitting on some train tracks with people around it, it will say there's a train on train tracks with people around it. It will. I think the example they showed that if the train was in motion, and you could tell that the train was in motion, it would say the train is moving down the tracks with people in the foreground. It's smart, and then we're only in 2016. 2017 soon. So I'm thinking 2020. If I still care about photography by then, things should be really cool.
If we're not all replaced by robots, as soon as they can figure out how to roll creativity into artificial intelligence, then we are all obsolete.
I know. I'm going to be in my holodeck with an IV and a catheter, and that's all I need. Just plug me into the matrix, and just, let me sustain.
Life is better that way.
Life is better, Like, where's Frederick? Oh, he's over there. Go roll him over.
He's flying his drone in virtual Cuba.
Yeah, exactly. Getting arrested in virtual Cuba. Yeah, don't get me started on that are we living in a simulation thing, man, because it could happen. All right, guys. TWiP listeners, TWiP Army, if you have a question that you'd like us to tackle on the show, you can hit us up on social media, or you can become a patron and post your questions on Patreon. I'm always going to check that first, because those folks have precedence when it comes to questions. So become a patron, twip.pro/donate. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to jump into the picks of the week. Coming soon to the TWiP network, a brand new show called Pocket Shooters. We believe this is an extremely important show, and the time has come for mobile phone photography to be taken seriously. The capabilities in some of these late model iPhone and Android devices is nothing short of amazing, and the image quality is getting close to what previously was only achievable using professional cameras. This show will explore the vast universe of tools, software, and techniques that you can employ to begin creating pro-level mobile phone shots today. So head over to TWiP.pro/pocketshooters and get in on our early announcement list and be one of the first people to check out this brand new show on the TWiP network. Once again, that's TWiP.pro/pocketshooters. All right, it's time for our Picks of the Week segment. This is the segment where you guys can recommend something to the photography TWiP Army listening audience. Christine, Christine the photographer, I'm going to let you go first. What's your pick of the week?
Okay, I'm going to get my best geek on.
Uh-oh.
I'm giving an app. I think my last two have been paper-based picks of the week.
Oh, like books or something?
Yeah. So it's an app called Duet. Have you heard of this?
I own Duet Display, yes.
You own it?
Yes.
Oh, the app, not
The app. No, not
You
the
did not
company.
create it, no.
No, I am not.
Like, shut up!
I am not the developer. I am a customer.
Have you talked about this already?
I think we talked about it a long time ago, but yeah, tell us what you think.
Well, so I have a pretty small little workspace, and I don't like to buy stuff, as we've established. So this turns my iPad into a second display, which for me when I'm home is basically where I put my junk, like my Spotify and my email and my messaging, so that when I'm editing, it's to the side. But the cool thing on location with tethering is that it gives me another display. So I can give a main monitor to a client, but then maintain a visual, because you can mirror your display. It's not just a secondary one.
Yeah, because
So
it just sees
turn
it
on
as
the-
another like monitor connected to your computer. It's not like it's a special thing. It's like there's another monitor connected to me, and you can do all the things that you could normally do with another monitor, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I just turn on the mirroring when I'm on location so that I can still keep an eye on what's going on, and then the client has the main monitor. Which is nice, because then I'm just, things are being redundant. I'm not continually adding to my gear pack like we talked about.
Very cool. Hey Don, is this available? It is for PC. Have you tried it?
I haven't. Well, I don't own an iPad anymore. I've switched to my my Microsoft Surface as a second device. But I'm not at a loss for desk space. I don't know if we can necessarily see this here, but I've got the one monitor here that is a secondary display that has everything else on. And then I've got a 32-inch display that has like a million icons and stuff on it. And then like a beastly computer that is sitting here that's all water-cooled and everything that weighs more than me almost. So, yeah, I go big or go home.
I had no dreams or wishes that this was going to change Don's world in any way.
No, it's not going to change my world.
You're like spitting in Don's hurricane.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, what was that? I have no idea.
But I will say that that the idea of passing a secondary display to a client is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it is.
So that if you can send, like, I know that Lightroom can split displays, and you can send a separate, more refined screen also to a second monitor, and so that you can show them just the good stuff while you've got all the user interface on your end. And to have sort of a side-by-side sit-down with the person where they can hold that in their hands while you've got the main screen in front of you, and they're on the other side talking to their significant other or whoever else is nearby, deliberating on a particular image versus a different one, and you can bounce back and forth and be in control of exactly what they're seeing without any of the stuff they don't need to see, I think is a wonderful idea.
Yep, I have to agree with that. Very cool. All right, I may have to start using mine now. I got it. I hate it. You're going to laugh at me, Christine, but I got it, and I used it. I plugged it into my iPad Pro, and I have another workstation at my house. My house is probably the antithesis of the Komarechka residence, right? Think austere, sparse. You've seen it. It's like it's not a whole lot of like crazy stuff going on here. But I have a workstation in my office now that's, it's my stand-up desk, where my MacBook Pro is, and off to the side is a iPad Pro that I generally watch YouTube videos on while I'm working on the Mac. I can look out the window. But I like it like that. I never thought of using it, and originally I had Duet Display connected, and it just made it kind of reduced the zen-ness of that area because I had too much stuff over there. Unlike Don Komarechka, I had too much stuff. And I was like, this is too much. If I want more desk space, I'll go sit at my big desk and I'll have more desk space. So, but to use it as an external display on a shoot has merit.
And which really only works if you're stationary, because it does have to be plugged in. It's
not wireless.
It's not wireless. So
yeah.
it depends on the project, but it has come in handy for people's eyeballs to be... Everyone is happy.
And you could, oh man, now my brain is churning. You could go get one of those stands that musicians use to, to put your iPad on it. You use it, because they use iPads for music, for sheet music. But
Just
you could get one of those and put your
yeah.
iPad on there and have it stabilized on a stand while you're shooting. Get it. And there's I was actually on Amazon today. They've got really long, 10-foot long Thunderbolt cables. I think the longest one I saw was 10 foot. But you can get these long Thunderbolt cables, plug that in, and you've got some mobility. Could work. I like it. All right, Christine, thanks for that. That's the duet display. And Don Komarechka, man, what is your pick of the week?
All right. I have. I admit that I have a bad case of gas, gear acquisition syndrome.
I knew that one.
And so I.
Wait, Christine. He also has gear acquisition syndromes.
Yes, exactly. So I have invested in some hardware recently, and this is a particular piece of gear from a company called Cognisys called the StackShot. And this is an automated focusing rail for macro photography. Now, I typically shoot a lot of my stuff handheld with macro work. It's a necessity of certain subjects, being water droplets and snowflakes that are melting and evaporating very, very quickly. But for certain projects, especially for video work, where I need very smooth automatic transitions moving into focus or rotating a subject, this is going to be fantastic. And I just used this on an unnamed shoot that I just did. It was the required piece of gear, because they asked me if I could move through a subject to get a focus stack of it and get it perfectly pristine, and then rotate the subject by about a degree and do the same thing again in a way that can be then put into rotational video that puts it all together in a video set. So the StackShot, I mean, this is the focusing rail component of that, but Cognisys, they make the controller, which is so powerful. It has, I mean, it's unplugged right now, of course, but it has the ability to program it in, I don't know, 10 or 20 different ways based on the kind of hardware that you attach to it. You can have 3 different abilities for motion. You can do horizontal, back and forth, like left and right, forward and backward, if you have multiple of these attached together, so that would be 2 of them. They also have a rotational component. And the rotational component is really interesting, because I can control this to shift it in just a circle so that it's spinning something around, which is what I needed to convert something to be a rotation by 1 degree. And it has a mode where I can focus stack the entire thing and then shift it by 1 degree and then focus stack it again. And it's worked phenomenally for that project, and I've got a ton of new ideas for it. And they've got this remote that I just think is the coolest thing ever, because while I can control it with the touchscreen on the device, I like having this little joystick that lets me move it forward and backward and then rotate it by moving this around. It's like I'm controlling my own little camera motion control apparatus here. The problem is it's not cheap. So you're looking at probably around $500 to $600 for an initial setup in U.S. funds. Once you get the setup with the rail, the controller, and a camera cable to control it. The rotational platform is, I think, another $350. The remote, again, is an expense on top of that. So I paid a lot for this setup. But I've got around 4 or 5 ideas right now that would not be possible without it, with some video stuff coming up over this winter. So I don't use this for a lot of my stills. When I'm doing stills, I like the freedom of rotating the camera around the subject. But for video work, or when I need to be in a really controlled environment, I don't think there is a better choice than this.
And listening to you describe that, I know Christine is probably like, "Oh, I need to go run out and buy that right now. How could I've lived my entire life without that stack shot macro rail package.
I think Don and I are going to be best friends.
You guys, the yin and yang, like completely the yin and yang. I love it.
We almost look like we could be related.
I know. You're like, Don, you could, I don't know who would be the younger brother, younger sister. I don't know. You guys might be twins. I don't know.
I kind of think so.
I love it. Cool. All right. So stack shot macro rail package $549 to get into it. I knew. Did you post something like this? Like there were some shots that someone was doing with slow motion. Was it you that posted it, Don?
It might not have been me
Facebook.
because I just got this package recently and I've put it into projects commercially that are not mine. I don't own the results of them. But I've got about, like I said, 4 or 5 ideas right now. If you could imagine this, Frederick, if you could imagine this platform right here, and if I have a super magnified macro lens pointing right to the center of this platform, and I leave this outside so it's nice and cold and it's not going to melt any snowflakes, and I put a clump of the most beautiful snowflakes in the center of this pedestal, and then I spin it and rotate it. How beautiful would that look? Okay, so that's one of the ideas. Now, maybe I'll even do that in stereoscopic 3D, which will blow people's minds.
You'll need to talk about that on your show. I think that is a perfect topic for your show. And that's a good example, what you talked about, like just to bring it full circle, to talk about the action cams we were talking about at the beginning of the show, how buying some gear for a need that you have versus, like you would never have purchased that just to have it laying around just in case one day you might have to do some kind of photography.
I had a use for it, an immediate use. A client requested footage that required this, and so I bought it for that, and now I've got ideas that would not be possible without it.
There you go. And that's how it happens. That's cool. I love it. All right, it's time for my pick of the week. You guys ready for this?
We are.
All right, so my pick of the week is this brand new lens that it's not a new lens, actually. It's new to me. It is a 42.5 f1.7 micro four thirds lens. And let me show it to you here. All right, here it is right there. Look at this. Look at that. So this camera, just so you can get an idea of the size of this camera. So this is the Panasonic GX8 right here. So that's how big the GX8 is. It's stabilized, 5-axis image stabilization. This is a beautiful camera. It's got an articulated LCD on the back. And then on the front of it, I have this little tiny 42.5, which is an 85 in full frame terms. And look how big this is. Look at this. Look at that.
Oh, look how cute.
It's a little, look, this is my iPhone. Look at that. Right there. And this lens, the images, sorry, Don. I know you're compensating. So the images that come out of this lens are fantastic. So the other body that I carry around is this guy. This is my Lumix G, the G8 right here. So it's got an articulated screen on there, and it has my 15 millimeter f1.7 on it. So between these two, I can shoot 90% of the stuff that I need to shoot. And look, it's like...
And both of those weigh about a third of my camera.
Yeah. Exactly. But we're doing different kinds of stuff. You're doing NASA level stuff. so much respect to the Komarechka. But it is available on Amazon. Here's the screen. So it's on Amazon right here. This is it. It's a beautiful. It's like before I bought this lens, I did the whole YouTube journey of watching reviews after review after review on this lens. Unfortunately, we didn't have any on All About the Gear, but there were other reviews on this thing, and they were like, people just rave about it. Now there's another lens that Panasonic makes, which is I want to say it's the 42.5 millimeter Nocticron. And I think that's the most expensive lens Panasonic makes, and it's also like 5 times the weight of this one. But it's a 1.2. So
yeah, it's amazing how that scales, right? From 1.7 to 1.2, and it just becomes this massive piece of glass that you can barely handle.
Yeah. We heard. Is this it right here? No, that's not it. I won't pull it up. But it is. Yeah, it's a beautiful lens, and I'm in this whole exercise of minimalism using just these 2 lenses and these 2 bodies. Each of these cameras are configured identically with the same, hot buttons and everything. So I can pick up either one, and I know exactly what's going to happen when I press the shutter. So it's liberating. And I have other lenses, but these are the ones that I'm carrying around, when I go out.
Right.
These are the ones that are in my bag all the time.
I will make one sort of devil's advocate comment on this, though, Frederick, is because you've got...
Don't rain on my parade, man.
No,
You're
I'm
gonna
not raining
rain
on your parade. I'm actually quite envious because you've got all of this gear in a small package.
Yeah.
The equivalency in focal length applies to the field of view, right? So the amount that you'll be getting in the frame, but it does not apply. The focal length doesn't effectively change. And focal length on a more fundamental level controls the compression of objects within the frame. And so one of the reasons why portrait lenses are very useful at, say, 85 millimeters, 100, 200 millimeters, is because they will compress the facial details to make it more pleasing to the eye. Now, by using that focal length equation to say, okay, well, you're using a sensor that has a 2x crop factor, that doesn't skirt around that problem of that compression. That compression is a factor of the focal length and not of the field of view.
So you're saying the bokeh on these lenses is going to be noticeably different than the bokeh on a similarly sized focal length on a full frame camera.
Not the bokeh per se, but let's use an extreme example like a fisheye lens.
Yeah.
So if I take a fisheye lens that has, if you put like a fisheye lens like right up to your face, like your nose is going to be like 10 feet wide. Like it's just, it's ridiculous. That same lack of compression, let's say, that separation of facial features will exist no matter what camera you put it on. It will just take a smaller viewpoint towards the center of it. So if you were to take a more telephoto lens, say like 24 millimeters, 40 millimeters, 50 millimeters, somewhere in that range, then facial features might appear normal to us. But the best portrait focal lengths at 80 millimeters plus will still be at 80 millimeters plus. The field of view will be condensed to exactly what that would be on a full-frame camera, but the compression of features will not be the same. The compression of features is a factor of the focal length and not of the sensor size.
Can I put in a request for your show? That you demystify focal lengths as they relate to different sensor sizes,
absolutely,
and all that, because I need to know this, because you sitting there explaining, I got the same chill down my spine as I had in calculus.
We could do a whole episode on it for sure. Yeah. But all I'm saying is that there is that one small compromise of these smaller camera bodies and these smaller lenses. And you know what? It's a compromise almost everybody is willing to make in most cases. For those people that are shooting with a full-frame camera, you probably know what I'm talking about when you see the differences between these things. Or if you've been a professional portrait photographer for many years, you'll probably understand that as well. Somebody new to this field, they might not know this, and they might not appreciate it or understand it, and that's fine, because that's not going to stop you from making fantastic images with this fantastic gear that we all have at our disposal. So I don't want this to be a roadblock for anybody. But it is that one tiny caveat that says a bigger sensor with longer focal length still has some benefit, and that's why some people still swear by medium format cameras that are now becoming more accessible as well.
Love it. Love it. Cool. Well, thank you for not raining too hard on my parade. It was a light mist, but it wasn't a full-on downpour. And I still love this kid. You gotta the kid is ridiculous. You just
and for the
it.
price, my God, you can't get anything else for this.
No.
And it's remarkable of what you can do with these kits. That for all intents and purposes, I can fit in my glove box and just leave it there for the moments where it's needed. Or my wife could fit into her purse, and that would be the camera for her. This is becoming quickly an anachronism, and I'm holding up my 1D series camera body for those listening.
It's bigger than your head in that shot because of that focal length.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So, I know I'm on the dying end of this stuff right now, and I need it for certain things, but I'm looking at what you have with that same gas.
Yeah, I know. This is I lust after these cameras because they're so well made, and just you would think it's still a leap for a lot of people to think that you can get high quality from a Micro Four Thirds sensor, or how could these little lenses possibly create something great? And they can, especially if this thing can create great shots.
Even as far as megapixels go, I've got a print on the wall behind me here, and that's made from 7 megapixels worth of data. It's an 80 by 20 print, and if you nose up to it, it looks fantastic. And it did not start that way. There was some massaging of pixels to get it to be as great as it is. But you can't buy a camera that is less than that by a large margin anymore these days. And so we have all of the tools we need. We just have to pick the right ones for us. And then we're limited only at that point by our creativity.
All right. On that note, let's close this show down. What do you say, guys? So what do you have coming up, Don, while you're on a roll there?
Well, I've got an unnamed project that I'm working on with National Geographic that's going to be a lot of fun through the winter months. I've got some sold-out stuff and more to announce in the future, but we'll save that for when I've got it all planned out.
All right, cool. You're always busy. I love it. Changing the world. You're the man that has his own money. I just want to go on the record. Did you know that, Christine?
I did know that. That's so cool.
The man literally has his own money.
I know. I kind of want one.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, and Christine, what about you? What's coming up for you? You're in holiday photo season, getting ready to do some pumpkin photos.
No pumpkin photos. Holiday season photos for sure, though. I mean, that's pretty much the rest of my year. If anyone needs me somewhere tropical in January, just give me a call.
Oh, there you go. How about Cuba? You could do
Cuba.
Some drone photography in Cuba. You could do like pumpkin shots inside a 7x7 cell.
Oh dear. Oh dear, no.
Yeah, that could. Yeah, Don. If Chris only lives an hour from you, I think that could be a field trip for you. Just to go
that would be fantastic.
Buy him a cup of coffee and tell him, hey, we talked about you on TWiP. Can you tell me what really went down?
I'm sure there might be a shot of whiskey needed for the best stories, but I can make that happen.
All right, cool. All right, folks, we are at the end of another episode of This Week in Photo. Remember, you can help grow and expand TWiP by becoming a patron. Every donation helps. Just head over to twip.pro/donate to get access to patron-only TWiP resources and my undying gratitude. That's twip.pro/donate. And you can also check us out at thisweekinphoto.com to subscribe to our other podcasts and all things photography. And now it's time to take that lens cap off.